Good evening, everyone. My name is Nyonbio Yorke. Like she said, I'm from Liberia. Tonight, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about my life, where I've been, where I'm at right now, and what I'm looking to do in the future. So my life story begins with my family in Liberia. My mother and father was born and raised in Liberia. They moved to the Ivory Coast in 1990. The reason they moved to Ivory Coast in 1989, a civil war broke out in Liberia. The civil war caused 800,000 people, including my family, to move from Liberia to neighboring countries in West Africa. They moved to a refugee camp in Ivory Coast called Peace Camp. 5 years after they moved to the refugee camp, I was born. I grew up in the refugee camp. I lived there for 11 years. When I moved to the United States and I tell people I was born on the refugee camp, they ask me, how is life like on a refugee camp? I start to tell them, first off, it's a life you never want to live. You don't want to be a refugee. It's not a life where you can do what you want to do. Live as a refugee, you are basically homeless. That's what it seems. Everything you need, you can't have at that time. These are some pictures of us on the refugee camp. This is a picture when my family first moved to the refugee camp. This is what it's like after it rains. These are houses people were living in on the refugee camp. By the time I was born, they developed the refugee camp a little bit, and it was like something like this. While we were living on the refugee camp, we couldn't go to school. Kids couldn't go to school. There was no hospital on the refugee camp, no school, and everything we got was given to us by the United Nations. Well, when I was on the refugee camp, since we couldn't go to school, the things the kids did to occupy themselves throughout the days were play soccer. I love soccer. That's the sport. I played soccer at Jefferson College, and I've been playing it since I could remember. And one of the most memorable part I have about playing soccer was in the rain. It was always the best time we had. And in my culture, people say rain brings down blessing. So whenever it rains, every kid on the camp was out playing. And I still remember up to this day, every time it rained, I want to go outside, but I don't trust American rain. There's always lightning. Yeah. There's always lightning, hail, or something trying to kill you. I don't know. The UNHCR, they are the United Nations Refugee Agency. When you are a refugee and you move to a refugee camp, they place you in zones. We had about 18 zones on the refugee camp. My family were the fifth group of people to move on the refugee camp, so they were placed in Zone 5. So while living in the refugee camp, life was very difficult, I already said that. The United Nations helped us with everything we needed. Once a month, I'll remember they'll bring trucks like this on the refugee camp, fulfill the food, and supply each family. And the food that was given to you, it was supposed to last you for a month. I remember this one time we were on the refugee camp, and we had a leak in our house, and it rained. It destroyed most of the food. So it was about 2 weeks left, and we didn't have enough food to continue for the rest of the week, for the rest of the month, excuse me. So we had to manage how we eat the food. I remember eating one meal a day for a week, and then by the end of the month, it was about 2 days left, we ran out of food. My family and I had to go hungry for a day. I was about 8, 9 at that time. I had to go to sleep that day without food. In 2002, my older sister got referred to the United States Immigration Agency to be resettled in the United States. By the end of 2003, 2004, she moved to the United States. This was one of the buses that picked her up from the refugee camp. And she moved to the capital city of Ivory Coast. And when the first group of refugees who moved to the capital city of Ivory Coast, they lived in hotels. At that time, they were being supported still by the United Nations. She spent 2 years living in a hotel, going through the immigration process. So before you can be admitted to the United States, you have to go through a vetting process. I'm going to tell you now, this is one of the hardest interviews I have ever been to. I've been to 5 interviews, and this was one of the toughest ones. I remember I was between the age of 11 and 12, and we had to go to an interview. And it was my mother and I in the office, and there was this immigration officer interviewing us. At a certain point, he stopped and asked my mother to leave the room. So like I said, I'm about 11 and 12. So I'm in this room with this immigration officer, and he asked me this question. He said, "Is your mother really your mother?" So I'm shocked. I'm 12, 11. I don't know what to say. She's been my mother for the past 11 years, so I don't know why she won't be my mother now. Yeah, and the reason why they ask those questions is because some people try to come to the United States and they'll do anything they can to get here. So they'll take somebody else's kid and be like, "That's my kid, and can you help us move to the United States?" So I understand why he asked me that question. But still, as an 11-year-old, I didn't know what to say at that time. And then while going through the interview, he tried to convince me to say my mother is not my mother. I was still surprised. So he offered to give me a piece of candy if I tell him the truth that the lady that was in the room is not my mom. So I'm still, I've never met this guy. It was my first time meeting him, and he keep asking me these questions. At that time, he knew more about me than my aunt did, and it was really shocking. In 2010, my mother and I moved to the United States. The picture on the right is a picture of my mother and I. I'm next to her, the little guy right there, that's me. Cute little Yorke, I know. The guy in the red, he's living in St. Louis right now. And the picture on the left is a picture of me and my mother. So when we moved to St. Louis in 2010, we went through the International Institute. And let me tell you a little bit about the Institute. They help a lot of refugee immigrants in St. Louis. When you first come to St. Louis, they greet you at the airport. They go to the airport, pick you up. By the time you get to St. Louis, they already find you an apartment or a house to live in. So they pick you up. They help people with jobs. Other people who don't speak English, they find interpreter, sign you up for English classes and stuff like that. My mother and I didn't have to go through the International Institute as much as everybody, and the reason was my older sister moved here 6 years before us, and she went through the process, got all the help she needed, and then when we came, she took care of us instead of the International Institute. Go back to that page. The International Institute was one of the people who helped my mother find a school for me. I went to Seoul International Welcome School, and when I went to the Welcome School, it was my first year ever going to school. I was 14 years old at the time. Never went to school on a refugee camp. Came to the United States. 2 months after that, I had to start school. Before I go through the school process, my mother, when she was in Liberia, she taught at a high school. So while I lived in the refugee camp, I was homeschooled a little bit. But when we moved here in 2010 and I had to go to an archery school, it was the most shocking event of my life. I didn't know what to do. I had to take 8 classes. And I'm telling you, it was my first time ever going to school. 8 classes, what am I supposed to do? My mom was tutoring me 2 classes, math and English, and that was it. That's what I knew. Now I had to go to science classes, history classes. And when I first walked in the school hallway, it was different. Like I said, it's an international school, so it's a school for newcomers in the in St. Louis area. And it wasn't as bad for me because most of the people who were there were refugees like myself, so I kind of get to know them pretty well. After international welcome school, I went to a high school called Southern International Studies. At Southern is where I learned about myself, who I'm going to be, what I want to do. At Southern International Studies is when I found some of my best friends, and I still go to school with them right now. Fabian, Yabwana, and Hassan, they're in the audience. At Southern International Studies was when I first got asked about my life as a refugee by my ESOL teacher, and I told her the same story I just told you guys. Immigrants in St. Louis. One thing, the real reason I'm really here tonight is people always discriminate immigrants. People always look at us different. Like when people do not welcome us here. And as an immigrant, it hurts. It hurts seeing refugees and immigrants only here to steal jobs. They're only here to benefit from the United States and then go back home. They're only here to disrupt us. That's not the case. I live in St. Louis, Missouri. And when I moved to St. Louis 5 years ago, the city was going downhill. I mean, it's still one of the most violent cities in the United States, don't get me wrong. But for jobs and businesses, St. Louis was going down. I live in South City, St. Louis. When I first moved there, most of the businesses were closed. 2 years after I moved to St. Louis, 2 gas stations got shut down. Right now, with the immigration population in St. Louis, it has been growing so fast that most of the immigrants who are coming here reopened those businesses. If you go on South Green, there's a block where it's a lot of international restaurants. And in those restaurants, there are Americans working for those immigrants. So there's some of the job opportunity they bring when they come to the United States. There's the 2 gas stations that were shut down my first 2 years here. They're open up by immigrant, and they're from South Asia, Nepal. And I know those guys. I went to school with some of those guys, and they already opened up gas station markets, businesses in St. Louis. One thing that I want to do as I grow up, this is my last year at Jeffco, and I'll be transferring to Lake Erie in Ohio. I want to study accounting and minor in international business. And the reason is there are a lot of businesses looking up to open up in Liberia. After the Civil War, the country got destroyed. People went missing, buildings, everything got destroyed. I want to do accounting and international business so I can maybe one day move back to Liberia and help rebuild the country. Being in the United States, if you go anywhere in the world, you get a lot of respect. People listen to you a lot. And with this American experience I have, with the education I'm going to get, if I go back home, I know a lot of people will listen to me. And I can influence those people. I can influence people to start opening up businesses. I can start a business. And one of the businesses I want to start is real estate. Right now, people in Liberian refugees in the United States wants to move back. But most of those people do not have people back home to help them move back or have the connection where they can build houses and then move back. And I want to open a business where we build houses for people in Liberia. Basically be the pipeline between Liberians in the United States and Liberians back home in Liberia, where they can build their houses through us and then one day move back. And with them moving back, we can help redevelop Liberia and bring it back the way it was before the Civil War. And this is my message to you. before you leave this afternoon. There are a lot of refugees in the world right now. A lot of refugees who wants the same opportunity I have tonight. A lot of refugees who are looking to be rescued. A lot of refugees who, when they come to the United States, will make a great impact on each and every one of us. Right now, I want you to open your heart up to every immigrant you see. These are people who have been through one of the hardest conditions you can possibly think of. People are running from war, running from being killed because of what they believe in. When they come here, do not be the person who do not accept them and make them feel unwelcome. They want to feel welcome. They want a home. My family wanted a home. My mom made a sacrifice, working a job that she doesn't like. Like I said, she used to be a teacher in Liberia. Now she's a custodian at Washington University. She make that sacrifice so I can get a better opportunity. There are a lot of refugees' parents who are praying every day to have that opportunity, to give their children a better education so they can better their life in the future. And that's my story. Thanks for everyone.